Well, Dave, it is awesome to have you here today. One of the privileges of the last 3 years of being in Orlando is getting to know you and the leadership that you have in our community. And I have longed to have a discussion with you like this today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. Well, let me start with this question. You live a life running towards danger, things that most people run away from, you're running towards. And as a result of that, you've experienced a lot of trauma over the course of your life. And none of us get out of life without trauma. But those in law enforcement, those in the military, they've got more trauma than most of us can imagine. And I just wanted to ask, to start this, how has your faith impacted your ability to deal with basically a life full of trauma?
Mm-hmm. What a great question. I think it's impacted it tremendously. As a matter of fact, as I'm sure we'll talk about some of the big challenges of my personal life too. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have got through life as successfully as I have been so far. Not only life and marriage and everything that goes along with that, because I've seen how much trauma affects our lives, especially in first responder world and law enforcement and the military as well. It's a passion for me because this is my 40th year in law enforcement. Wow. I've seen a lot, but I've seen a lot of harm and a lot of trauma and a lot of damage that it's done to law enforcement officers and their families and their lives, including my own. And I just have a passion to share back with people what made an impact on our life, on mine and my wife's life, how we're able to kind of, traverse through some of the trauma and tragedies that we've been. They tell us that the average person in life will experience maybe one or two, maybe three traumas or tragedies in their lifetime. The average law enforcement officer who has 25 years will experience up to 800 different incidents. Now, all of those are not as personally impactful for them, but they say several hundred, up to 200 or 300, will have a significant impact on their life. And the problem, what we're seeing today, is it's not always that one incident, right? We always think it's the one, and it very well could be. Pulse nightclub is a good example. Showing up to a situation where there's a child drowning certainly is traumatic, impactful on your life. But what we're finding now is the accumulative trauma. So in other words, while you're on a scene of a death investigation or a drowning or a domestic violence incident, being a professional means you don't have time to cry or to weep or to think, man, this is just horrible. You have to act, and you're there to be professional and serve a purpose. And what you do is you kind of compartmentalize that thing. And what we know now is that you put it back there in this little compartment, and then you leave, and you go to another call, or you go to another call, and then maybe at the end of the day or tomorrow, man, I put that away. I don't want to talk about it again. And then the cumulative effect of that over the years that we are finding out now, science is finding out now, that is the most devastating thing for our first responders, being law enforcement or a fire department or a medical as well. So that's the big difference. Yeah.
Well, first let me say, most of us are getting accustomed to say to law enforcement, fire department, military, thank you for your service. But in light of what you just said, thank you. I mean, what you have carried and have to carry, most of us have no clue about. And I know suicide is huge among military. I think 27, 28 a day, and it's not guys that are currently in the service, because you talk about there is this accumulation of trauma, but over a period of time after you're out is when it really, if you don't deal with it, that's when it really shows up.
Correct. Whenever you experience a traumatic scene, it doesn't matter what it is, right? Whenever I go to a scene, even a domestic violence, when you see violence, there's stress. Mm-hmm. You have what we call post-traumatic stress. Everybody does. After the incident, you have stress. Think about this. You were a ball player, right? If you twisted your ankle, if you didn't take care of your ankle and you just went out and kept playing, what's going to happen? It's going to get worse and worse. Mm-hmm. But if you twist your ankle, you probably have a physical therapist, especially playing for a good college team, right? They're going to have a PT with you, it's rest, ice, compression, take your time, take your ibuprofen. You're going to take care of it. So when we get stress, if we learn how to take care of that stress, it doesn't turn into a post-traumatic injury, right? And that happens quite a bit. So through critical incident management, we understand we're going to be stressed after a bad call. We should be. I should experience when I go to a call and a child or a woman or a husband or somebody's been beaten to death. It's traumatic, right? I should expect some sleepless nights. I should expect some tossing and turning. I should expect maybe a little bit of moral failures. Even God, why does these things kind of happen? As Christians, we get that all-time biggest question. But we know that's going to happen for about 2 weeks to 30 days. And I know I need to share that with people. I need to be vulnerable, which cops and fire and military are not good at being vulnerable.
Well,
right? We hold men in general.
Yeah.
But it turns into an injury. And then if we don't take care of that injury, what we find is after about 30 days, they don't take care of that injury. And maybe they take care of it by just putting it in that box in the back here and just saying, I took care of it. I'm going to put it aside. I'm never going to deal with it again. But that just doesn't happen. And just like we say this all the time, we know if we get in an argument with our wife, a blow up usually isn't about whatever the issue is, right? The issue isn't the issue. The issue usually is the accumulative stress or something underneath the issue that is just bringing us all to life one day, one time, just kind of like that one break. I call it that one traumatic time. For us, when we go into, when I was on the SWAT team, we'd do explosive entries, and we would call that a breach point. Okay, the breach point is when we would put det cord on the wall or on a door, and a team would get behind, a team would get in a safe location, and you would breach that door, you would hit the energizer and explode the door off, right? That particular time, that moment in time from a tactical safety, when I'm going from the light to the darkness inside, is the most dangerous time for a police officer or a SWAT team member or a military guy. It's the unknown. And we all have these breach points in our life. And we hit these breach points, and that post-traumatic stress turns into an injury, and we don't take care of it, and it can turn into what I don't like to say is post-traumatic stress disorder. That when you just haven't handled these things, these issues all your life, and it usually isn't that one thing, it's just that one little thing at the end, and that thing at the end could be something tiny.
Yeah,
that just made everything else explode, and now you've got to run through that door blind. And that's the worst time. We call it the fatal funnel in life.
Well, you've had a couple fatal funnels.
I've had a bunch, yeah.
Yeah. And the first was about your son, Caleb. How old were you when Caleb was born?
Well, I was 42 when Caleb was born, so he was my third child.
Okay.
We are a commingled family, and that's part of my story that I share and I talk about because of the things I've experienced in law enforcement. Not because of that, because of the decisions I made and because I wasn't following Christ at that time.
Well,
ended up in a divorce.
Well, marriages are under a lot of stress in law enforcement and in the military because of the trauma and the stress. Right?
Sure. They'll tell us, and you look at the data, it says anywhere about 50%, a little bit more, a little bit less, depends on what site you look at, that in the United States are divorce rates. But I will tell you, people in the military and special operations, people in special operations in law enforcement, I was on a SWAT team for 15 years, their divorce rates, they say, is in the high 70s to 80% rate. 7 or 8 out of 10 marriages will end up in a divorce. If you choose to take that, I worked undercover, I worked intelligence, was assigned, worked some dealings with the outlaw motorcycle gangs at one time. So all those things put a tremendous amount of stress on your relationships.
So your second wife, what's her name?
Shelley.
Shelley. So you and Shelley had your third child.
Yes, our first together.
Your first together.
First.
So your first together was Caleb.
Yep.
Tell us that story.
Yeah. So in 2008, Caleb John Thomas Ogden was born. He was John Thomas is named after our both of our dads. We weren't sure which one we were going to name him after, so we just hyphenated it because we figured we could. Everybody else is doing it. And I'll tell you, I love being a dad. My kids were actually already adult. I have a stepson. Her son was a young teenager at the time, 12, turning into 13 years old. And he was born smiling, about a 6.5-pound kid. He did have a couple little things. His feet were a little turned out, and we had to put him in some braces and things like that, but nothing spectacular with that. But in about 6 months old, you see these normal progressions, and we started kind of noticing a few things. And to be honest with you, we're older parents, right? And by definition, I'm 42. My wife is younger, so she was 37, I think, at the time, 36, or 37.
Now, where was your faith journey when all this was happening?
Well, my faith journey was fairly non-existent. So let's go back a little bit more. So I didn't grow up in a Christian family. Mm-hmm. Nothing about Jesus, God, or anything else whatsoever. I didn't know anything about church. I do remember as a young man, we grew up in New York at 10 years old. My mom and dad divorced. They both had different relationships going. Believe it or not, at the age of 9, our parents set us down, and they said, Mom and her new boyfriend are moving to Florida, and Dave, you get a choice to stay with your mom or dad.
At that age, you had to make that
9
decision.
years old, I made the decision. I made the decision to actually come down to Florida, and the only thing I can recall making the decision is that my baby brother, Darren, who's down here now, who actually is a law enforcement officer as well in Fort Lauderdale. But all I can remember is he was much younger. I took care of him, babysat him all the time. And I must have just felt a presence of kind of like it was my kind of job to continue to take care of him. I can't remember any more than that.
So you moved to Florida. It was her new boyfriend a presence in your life? Or?
He was. He's my stepdad, and they eventually got married. And, he's my biological dad, and I didn't really have much kind of in common the rest of our lives. And you see that a lot in law enforcement, to be honest with you. But 2 of my siblings grew up in New York. 2 of us grew up down in Florida. And I think between the 4 of us, my brother and I down south are pretty close, and we're very similar, both in law enforcement, have got decent careers, things like that. My sister and my other brother, they grew up differently. They've unfortunately been in jail and prison and things like that, and complete dynamic. So it gives a whole thought process of, nature over nurture and all this kind of stuff. But I did not have a Christian background at all.
When did that happen for you? When did you?
I was 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved down to Florida at 10 years old. We actually moved to New Smyrna Beach at first, and we moved from there. Then my dad got a job we pretty much grew up in Pine Hills. He got a job there. Our family was in a laundry leasing business our whole life, so he knew how to do that. Basically got a job down at Speed Queen in Pine Hills, and that's how we landed there.
And where does your faith journey, where do you trace that back to?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So in Pine Hills, if you remember in the late 70s, there was this thing called busing. We bused students for what we thought was integration, and that was going to be better. I was actually bused to Carver Middle School, which is predominantly a black school. I didn't fare well there, to be honest with you. I spent my days fighting for my lunches, trying to use the bathroom, getting beat up. Got suspended multiple times. I'm a chief of police now. Can you imagine that? I got suspended 3 or 4 times. And I remember that my dad came to pick me up one day, my stepdad, and we didn't have cell phones and things of that nature. And I remember him showing up, and for the first time, he kind of was like, "What's going on here?" And he said, "What kind of environment?" I'm like, "This is my day in and my day out." Through that experience, we had his boss's kids went to a private Christian school. So what happened is they got me into a private Christian school the next year, not knowing what even that meant other than it was safe. It was kind of safe. We didn't have the money and the finances to do it. So from the age of 14 years old, what happened is I paid my way through private Christian school, being the janitor, paying for my own way, $55 a month, every month for 4 or 5 years. So that's where my faith, it was different. It was weird. I came in and people were going to church. They were praying. I'm like, I don't even know what any of this stuff is. I don't know who Jesus is. I don't know who God is. I don't know none of this stuff.
I'm going to interrupt you just a minute.
Yeah.
You know the name Ed Cole? Ed was the kind of the founder of men's ministry, and he was part of the Promise Keepers in the early days.
Yeah.
He had worked as a janitor, putting himself through school as well. So here are 2 men's men that through this real process. I would call it a humbling process. I mean, I'm sure there were kids that were not kind to you if you're working as the janitor, even if it's a Christian school.
It was interesting. Obviously I wrote a leadership book and talk about leadership, and I tell people all the time, the position of a janitor gives you really good insight on people and their character. And somebody says, how do I pick a church? I'm like, go and talk to the janitor. Go and talk to the lowliest person that works at that church, and you see how people treat them. And then you decide whether or not you should go to that church.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Well, you can apply that to the company you work at. How does the boss treat
Absolutely.
the receptionist? How does he treat the mail clerk?
Yeah.
So you start going to Christian school, and that's when you first start hearing the gospel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when I first started hearing and seeing, and again, it's weird when you don't hear the gospel. I will tell you a little funny story. So when I was in the 5th grade, before we came to Florida, my mom put me in an aftercare program because she had to work a couple jobs. She was a single mom at the time. And I remember walking from the school, and we were in New York, and it's all Catholic up there. So the after school was Catholic church. I've never been to church. I don't know anything about church whatsoever. So that was the first time. So we walk up, and I do remember walking into this classroom. And I remember walking into the classroom seeing nuns. Never seen a nun before in my life, other than Sally Fields. She was on. I remember her. I got to be honest, as a boy, she was pretty cute. I'm like, this could be interesting. The nuns didn't look that way there. But I do remember looking around. I remember looking up, and if you've been to a traditional kind of Catholic, I saw a picture of this guy hanging with blood all over him and hanging what I know now is a cross, and I see all these other pictures. And it kind of freaked me out. I didn't know what I was getting into. I'm like, what are we doing? What is this picture? Who is that, and what's going on? So I was introduced to an after school, nothing else. And it was scary. And I remember one afternoon, one other thing that happened is we go down into what I know now is a sanctuary, and we're in this long line. And I'll never forget, a good buddy of mine named Stephen is right in front of me. And we're walking in line, and we're walking up to these just little cubicles, right? And we know that's from the Catholic Church where they give confession. I didn't know what that was at all. I'm looking around and looking at this pretty amazing place, but there's more pictures of this guy hanging, this dead guy, which I know now is Jesus. I didn't know that before. And I asked my friend Stephen, I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to confession. I'm like, well, what's a confession? He's like, well, you're going to go in and tell the priest, to tell the father of what you've done wrong. Now, I'm 9, 10 years old. I'm like, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a good kid. What do you mean? What have I done wrong? So as we're getting closer, I just remember getting nervous. Like, what am I going to tell this guy? What have I done wrong? I'm a kid. I said, I haven't done anything wrong. And Stephen says, just tell him you were mean to your sister. I'm like, well, that's true. So I remember going in. I remember sitting down. He said something. I'm not sure. I've seen movies now, so I kind of imagine what it was. And I just remember blurting out, I was mean to my sister. And he told me to do a couple things. And I'm like, can I go? You can go. So I ran out. So that is my remembrance of Catholic Church in the beginning. Not to, I don't want to,
But that was your introduction to faith right then. And so there was no explanation or understanding for you at that point.
No, nobody told me anything about what's going on. I think they maybe said this is Jesus. I'm like, who is Jesus? Who's this guy? But it really was a Christian school I went to probably several years later that I got introduced to faith. It was a strict academic school. We had Bible study every day. We did church in the middle of the week. So I definitely can tell you that I got a good fundamental understanding and good knowledge, good biblical understanding of what the Bible teaches and preaches. I didn't have a relationship with God, and I had a relationship with a girlfriend at the time, and that's kind of how life blew up for me. We got pregnant, had our first kids. I was out of the school. So I will tell you this, coming down, moving to Florida, parents separating, having to switch schools, hearing people say, everybody loves you, they got to help you, help people, hand up. I got in trouble. I did something wrong. It's completely wrong. But I just remember sitting in that office and as a senior, and them saying, "You're out of here, kid. You're done in school. You're done in church. Just go out and on your own." Walking into Evans High School, handing them my transcripts, and them going, "What are you doing here? you have more credits than you need to graduate. I'm like, well, they won't give me my high school diploma. I got to go to here. And I took a couple night classes and got my high school diploma, technically from Evans High School, not from anywhere else. So I share all that because at that particular time, as that happened, I was like, well, these people are phonies. Everything they've been saying for the last couple of years. Now, listen, I take onus, understand as a mature man now, things that I did wrong in my life, no doubt about it. But I definitely had church hurt. No doubt about it. I had church hurt. So
by the time you're finished high school, you're still not following Jesus. You've been introduced to the truth.
Introduced.
Yeah.
I tried. I did try a little bit, and I tried to stay in church and do some of those things. But no, I just ended up kind of walking away. The interesting thing is I walked away as far as participating, being involved in church and stuff like that. But I think I told you, I worked undercover. I worked on the sheriff's office SWAT team, and we were in some pretty vicarious positions, some pretty. And I will tell you that when I got into some of the most stressful positions, I always stopped and said a little prayer.
So even though you really weren't following Jesus yet, you still
I did.
Knew enough to pray.
I knew enough to stop and kind of ask for forgiveness and kind of get back right, I thought, with God, check those little boxes, so to speak. And I remember doing those all through my life.
You right out of high school, you went right into law enforcement, right?
I did. I went a couple of years later. I was a plumber for a couple of years because I was a little bit too young. So I got into plumbing at about, I was one of the early young guys, graduated at 17 years old, but young guys. So by the time I was 19, I'm getting into law enforcement. I'm 59, be 60 now, so it's my 40th year.
So tell us about your rookie. Who was your training partner?
Well, it's my training
Your trainer, who was
Corporal Stout.
Corporal Stout. Yeah.
That was my first day on the job. I will never forget this. It's Florida, but it does get cold in Florida. It was a January morning. It would have been actually 1988 because I did 2 years in corrections, so I'll never forget. It was a freezing morning. I showed up in the morning, and Corporal Hoyt Stow, Corporal Stow is a magnificent man. I love him to death. Super smart, old school country, deep Southern drawl, smoked cigarettes, like an old school sailor. And he meets me at the gas station, and Hoyt says, throws me the keys. He says, "Gas it up. Pull it up front. I'll be up there in a minute." I'm like, "Yes, sir." So I'm crisp uniform, all polished, and I think it's polished. I'm trying to get best. I gas the car up. I pull it up front. And I sit in the other side of the car. I've got my books. I've got everything, and I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm ready. I'm finally a deputy sheriff. I'm ready to get out on the road. And Corporal Hoyt Stow opens the door, sits down, and lights up a cigarette. And he doesn't say a word. He breathes in, blows it out, goes all over the smoke. I don't smoke. Say, "Hey, boy." He says, "Do you smoke?" And I'm like, "No, sir, I don't smoke." He takes another draw, blows it back out, all over the car. Remember those early days of Cheech and Chong movies? That's what it looked like. He says, "Do you drink?" I go, "No, sir, I'm like only 19 years old. It's not even legal to drink." He takes another draw. It's like, "Do you cuss?" He sounds just like that. I said, "Sir, I try not to cuss." I said, "Try not to develop bad habits." He sits back in his car, stares straight out of his window, takes another drag, blows it out, and it's exactly what he says. "Hell, son, you ain't gonna make it." That's what he tells me. I'm sure Hoyt did this to every new trainee. And,
So what did that stir in you when he said that?
I thought he was trying to scare me at the time. It probably took most of my career to figure out what that really meant. He wasn't really talking about me being weak. He was really talking about what the weight of this profession would do to me. He probably couldn't articulate it. He didn't know how back in that day. You're talking 1988. We didn't have the words. We didn't have mental health. We didn't have all this research and understanding about what trauma and stress, and I don't even think post-traumatic stress disorder was even a thing back then, to be honest with you. But he was telling me something then that later on, as I recalled that story, that was significant. He was telling me, this job is heavy.
So you're 19. Caleb is born when you're 42.
Yeah.
So you'd already had 20 years in
Oh, yeah.
by the time.
I was done and over. I didn't think there was going to be any more kids around, any more young ones.
So talk about where your faith was when Caleb was born. Where was your faith in that?
Oh, well, so, yeah, I will tell you. So let me tell you a little bit of the story. About 6 months, I'm throwing my son around. And as I'm throwing around, as every dad does, right? You throw him up, you toss him around, you toughen the boys up. And I remember I looked at his eyes, and his eyes had a nystagmus in it. You might not know what that is, but his eyes were jerking. And you might say, well, what does that mean to you? You're not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But I actually ran a traffic division and a DUI division for 5 years. And a horizontal gaze nystagmus is what we see police officers do when you see this for DUI detection.
Yeah.
What we're doing is following your eyes and following your eyes, and if they can have a track and a smooth pursuit. Because we know that drugs, alcohol, and the only other thing that could do that is a neurological issue when your eyes jerk. So if you have several beers and I asked you, Jim, to follow my fingers, your eyes would jerk just a little bit. The more and more beers you have, the more intoxicated, they're going to jerk dramatically. My son's eyes were doing that. Well, I know he wasn't drunk. I know we weren't giving him drugs. So we brought him to the doctor, and the doctor looked at me like, you're just a cop. What are you talking about? So that brought on some, for us, looking into what could be wrong with him, because the doctor said, okay, something is wrong. In about 16 months, when he was 14, 16 months old, 6 months after that, we finally found that he had a rare neurological condition called Sandoff's disease. It's terminal. There's several diseases that are similar to it. Nobody in the history has ever lived through this disease. I mean, children will die. It's just a matter of, they told us he would die before he was 2. He made it after he was 2, just because of my wife's amazing care. So I went into what I call command mode at that time, right? I was going to save my son's life. I have never lost a mission. I've never lost a hostage situation, a barricaded gunman, any of those kind of things. I attacked it just like I did as a SWAT team leader. I picked up the phone, I scoured the internet, I called people all over the world to try to save his life. And, we found a conference, a medical conference, 3 weeks after diagnosis in Tampa. I picked my family up, we went over there. The interesting thing about those conferences is I was interested because there were 5 medical doctors there, neurological surgeons, people who were doing stem cell transplant, bone marrow transplant, stem cells on kids, UK, Boston's hospital, Duke University. I was going to fix the problem. My wife was going for another reason, to engage with ladies to understand how to take care of our child. And it was there that I kind of first realized that as we walked our son into this conference, we had all these people run over and rush it. And my son was in a wheelchair, or not in a wheelchair, he was just in a regular stroller. He was only, I think he was only like 2 years old at the time. He wasn't even quite 2, a year and a half or so. So he was smiling and giggling. He laughed a lot, kind of all the time. I later on found out that was actually seizures. We didn't know that at the time. And that was the beginning of his seizures. But he looked normal. And all these people that ran to me had kids that didn't look normal. They were in kid carts and special chairs and suction tubes and air masks and things like that. And I remember looking at them, and I remember freaking out. And they ran over and they said, "Oh, hi, we're glad you're here." I'm like, how do you know I'm a part of this? How do I know I'm with you? They knew. I would know now if I ran into another child. As a matter of fact, when my wife and I get to meet a special needs child, I mean, for us, I'll walk over and I'll ask the parent, hey, what's your child's name? Can I talk to them? What's going on? And they're like, because I know how much that means to a parent. Because a parent with a special needs, and I know you're familiar with that, right?
Right.
Sometimes other parents and other adults, they just want to shy away.
Right.
Like, I don't want to deal with that, but we know how special it is. So I share that first time I was still in command mode. I'm like, I'm going to talk to the doctors. We're going to save this kid. And you go figure out all the medical stuff or whatever. But we learned some valuable lessons there. We learned about quality of life, how to care for our son. And we learned about palliative care, how to go on long-term hospice care, which was a godsend for us. But as we come back, I can share with you, I didn't immediately go to God. I didn't. If I'm to be honest with you, I was, a lieutenant or a captain at the time. I'd spent my time and career in the sheriff's office working undercover. I'd done some hard things. I felt like I was the good guy. I felt like I deserved better than this. I'm just going to be straight honest.
So were you kind of pointing your finger at God? Why?
I was. And I can remember going home, and this is powerful for the ladies that are out there. I can remember, I was used to be a big runner. I'm not now. I walk. Now as we get older, we learn to walk. But I would go out and I'd run 5-10 miles on the West Orange Bike Trail. And I do it for two reasons. Number one, I'd like to stay in shape. But mostly I did it because I would just sweat like crazy, right? And there I could wrestle with God. I could literally cry. I could shake my fist. I could honestly swear, cuss, how dare you do this to me? Why? And I would do that so that my wife wouldn't see that reaction to me, right? She wouldn't have to see that. She didn't want to.
It's where you went to get real with your emotions.
I did. I remember coming back, and my wife did the opposite. She started picking up her Bible. And here's the interesting thing. Then she started asking me questions. She started to say, you went to that private Christian school, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, I did. She said, where's our son going to go when he dies? I'm like, well, I said, most of these folks believe that he kind of gets a pass, gets a free card. I wasn't theologically giving her. I was like, most people believe, most pastors will tell you that he gets that pass. He doesn't have a propensity to make that decision. It is a decision that you make, and he gets to go to heaven. And then she asked me the most important question. Where are you going? I'm like, well, immediately. Well, I'm going to heaven. Back when I was in school, I made this little special pact with God and accepted in my life. How come we haven't talked about this? I was like, I remember that moment. I say it like this. I've been known for being a leader. I have led men to hostage situations, barricaded gunmen. I've been in shootouts. I've been at shootouts. I've seen death. But it was like a gut punch saying, you're not leading your family well.
So Caleb's illness really brought both you and Shelley to a place of really having to consider eternity.
It did. It did. Through his life, I tell people all the time, I mean, thank God for him. And because of him, I wish he was here today. I wish he was kind of sitting right here, but we probably wouldn't be here, right? I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better leader. I'm a better man of God. I'm a man of God because of him, because of the trials that we went through. At the end of the day, it just brought me to my knees. I mean, I had to come to the place that I'm like, I can't fix this.
You talk in your book about the illusion of control.
Yeah.
Is this kind of when you began to learn that?
It is. Yeah, absolutely. We all have the illusion as men that we have control. And the fact of the matter is, if I'm in control, then I'm not letting God be in control of my life. And I had to learn that. I learned that the hard way. And I think the truth is, we know this, that most men, or most adults, I think, that come to Christ as an adult, probably come to Christ because of some kind of a real tragedy, right? They're just brought down to the bottom. They're just dropped to their knees and like, what else? There's nothing else.
Yeah,
or just take over.
I worked with a guy by the name of Bill Glass for a number of years in prison ministry, and he said, Jim, Billy Graham told me once, most people don't come to Jesus after the age of 18 unless they're in crisis. And there's something that shakes them out of their comfort zone and moves them to ask the deep questions. And that's kind of your story.
Is. Right. Typically, your mind has been open to something new, or your heart's been broken.
Yeah.
One of those two things. And usually your mind's open when you're younger, and you're just kind of transforming that.
And so that was a personal trauma that God redeemed for you and your wife in terms of turning you towards Jesus.
Absolutely. He's still redeeming every single day. I mean, we say things like count our blessing. Do we really understand what that means? And I think Christians would be well served if they really sat down and started counting their blessings and started really kind of writing. And that's what, my book and other things, when I really sat down, people told me younger, you should start writing things. I wish I would have, because even my stories are probably not as best told as if I would have written them down. Now I write everything down. Partly because we're older. I'm almost 60. We forget right now. But really because I want to count my blessings in my life.
Well, and you do. For those of you watching, Dave's written a book that's not come out yet. When's it coming out? The Seeds of Resilience.
Seeds of Resilience should be out hopefully at the end of August, beginning of September is when
August of 2026.
Yes,
okay.
This year.
And in that, you've let me read advanced copy or early copy. In it, you talk about the power of gratitude, which is what you're talking about, counting your blessings now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I over the last number of years, I've studied under a guy by the name of Dr. Jim Wilder, and Dr. Wilder talks. One of the things he says, all trauma is a memory without Jesus, and the idea that we know as believers now that Jesus is with us all the time, but in trauma we're not aware of his presence. We're not aware that he's there, and so there's a number of healing modalities that Christian counselors use now that help people encounter Jesus back in their traumatic memories, to see what he was doing, what he was saying, where was he, to actually change the neural pathways in our memories to help bring some healing of the trauma. But he also talks about joy strength. That the joy is ultimately relational. Somebody's glad to be with me in my pain. And the psalmist says, in his presence there is fullness of joy. So fullness of joy is actually being in the presence of God. And as we learn to encounter the presence of God, one of the things he teaches us to do which is something I know you guys in law enforcement do all the time. One is reset the nervous system. I know, like the deep breath in with your nose.
We call it combat breathing, 4-point breathing.
4-point breathing, yeah.
I was just doing that yesterday with my troop.
So whenever you're in a stressful situation, I mean, we see, those of us not in law enforcement or the military see it every time we watch a basketball game. Before anybody shoots a free throw, they reset. And when you guys are in stressful situations, you do that as well. And one of the things Wilder teaches is when you want to encounter the presence of God, reset your nervous system, and then take 3 or 4 minutes to focus on a gratitude, something you're really grateful, and that becomes an on-ramp for communion or intimacy with God. It's changed my life, shalom and gratitude, and it sounds like that's something that you didn't study under Wilder, but it's something that you learned yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is I always say, science is finally keeping up with the Bible.
Yeah.
And for years and years as an instructor, I taught combat type stuff. And the only thing I've done longer than law enforcement has been a martial artist. So you probably know that too. And I owned my own jiu-jitsu school for a while. So I've been teaching combat breathing techniques. I learned under Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman in the early 90s. All of our team brought him along several times for conferences and things like that. And I learned that back then. I deployed that during critical incidents. I deployed that during sports, competing all over the country and the world in jiu-jitsu. So I deployed that many different times. There's what I call combat breathing techniques. They're grounding techniques in general psychology that they learn about. But again, science is finally kind of keeping up with the Bible on that. And what I love for me, and that's one of the reasons when I wrote my book, Seeds of Leadership, is I felt like I knew a lot of really good leadership principles. And then finally, I kind of realized, oh, these are really all good biblical principles. When I finally turned my life over back to Christ and had a relationship, I attacked that just like I attacked anything else, being on the SWAT team, being a competitor, working up the chain of command in the police department. I attacked it with everything I had because it was the only way I knew how to do things. Reading and studying and being a part. I'll give you a great example. We did a couples group, and we try to do at least one couples retreat a year. because we understand from a statistical standpoint that we are divorced people, that we're both first responders, or had been first responders, and we've had a child who has passed away that we had. Statistically, we are in the single digits of our marriage being successful. But our marriage is as strong as any marriage. Now, we still have the same problems everybody else does. She still tries to tell me how to drive. And we joke about that, and I actually teach that in my class, that I love my wife to death. I've got college degrees and going for master's degrees. I run police departments and rebuilt things. But when I sit in that driver's seat, you would think I'm a complete idiot and I don't have to turn left and right or pick my own parking spot. And we just kind of laugh about that. And I'm like, but I'm grateful for you. But man, I have learned to be so grateful for the things in my life. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for her being the silent testimony. Because had she not done that, God placed her in my life at that time to be the silent testimony. I know how to be a commander.
She was reading the word, and then she started asking you questions.
Yeah. I can't imagine if she would have just been reading the word and do probably what maybe many may want to do when their husbands are not leading well, is tell them what they should be doing or tell them they're not leading well. She didn't do that. She asked me questions.
And you discovered it that way.
I discovered it through that. But again, it was a big gut punch to recognize yourself as a phony, as a fraud, as somebody who said you're leading men in crisis and teams, and this is the biggest battle you're ever going to have in your life. You better lead your family well.
So Caleb ends up dying.
Yeah, he made his 4th birthday in just a little bit longer.
And I think you and your wife grieved differently. I think I remember she liked to go out and sit at the graveside.
She did.
You just got busy.
Yeah, I'm prone to do that. We're all kind of guys are prone to do that and get a little bit overcommitted and get busy. And we had to learn how to grieve well. And grieving well means grieving differently. One of the things we did is we picked a very nice grave site for him. We've got a little stone seat there and it's in a shaded area by some water. I knew she would want to visit him. She had since, first of all, she retired from law enforcement completely to care for him full time. I remember telling her, she's like, what do you want to do? I said, take care of our son. I mean, that's all I want you to do. And let me tell you, she took care of our son like nobody could ever. I mean, our living room looked like a hospital bedroom, with oxygen tanks, suction tubes, an actual hospital bed. But my wife had everything so organized, so efficient. My son never needed anything there. He never had a single bed sore. He was always loved. He was always taken care of. I kind of tell people like this, we had the opportunity, despite the things that we had happen bad in our life, to kind of be the best parents we could be. I love little kids, but I love little kids when they can run and jump and play, right? Because I just imagine wrestling and grappling. I was going, and I opened my own jiu-jitsu school. My plan was to open my school, retire from law enforcement. My kid's going to come on, be a big national jiu-jitsu champion. We're going to travel around. We're going to do this kind of stuff. And that, that just, all those dreams and all those hopes were just kind of blown away. So we thought about things and grieved about things completely differently. And she would go to the gravesite every day. She retired, took care of him. When he was gone, I had to realize that I went to work. I came home, and I didn't do any ancillary things at that time. I came home at 5 o'clock, sometimes a little earlier. I was really good about that so I can take care of him and take care of her. But she was there 24/7. It was a struggle sometimes to try to do a date night once a month, not once a week, because she didn't want to leave him, and we didn't want to leave him with anybody that we didn't trust. But it's amazing that people that come into your lives, right? The nurses that we had help us, which were just amazing, loved on him. We're at his funeral, and we're like, hey, I'll come in on Saturday night, and you guys go to dinner for 2 hours. And we would not have trusted anybody else with the medical needs of our son. But my wife went every single day. And this is a really cool story, how God just kind of, I'm not one of these, I think we kind of both have similar theologies. Like God spoke to me like, something didn't pop out. But I do believe God puts stories and positions and people in our lives, and he kind of gears those things for whether we recall or remember. And my wife went every day, and she was about to go back to work at 2 years later. And she was struggling. She was really struggling, like, I don't know, I don't want to go. What about him? I won't be able to visit him every day. And I'm like, honey, I said, she knows he's not there. He's in the presence with God. But that comforted her. And that's okay if that comforts her. I allowed her, not allowed her, but I didn't say encouraged, but I walked beside that, understanding this is your time. And she was there every day, just about, reading her Bible, reading her book. And she got peace there, whether she was there 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, that was her peace. And she was just not feeling at peace. And we were asleep. She woke up in the morning. She doesn't do it. I wake up and jump out of bed and I'm ready to go work out. And she goes, how do you do that? She doesn't do that. She jumps out of bed and she scribbles something down. And she gets up and she goes in the living room. Now our routine is we wake up, she goes in first, she sits on her side of the section, does her Bible study. I usually wake up, open my Bible, I do my Bible study. Then usually she asks me some questions. So I kind of came out, I'm like, what's going on? She goes, this. I'm like, what's this? I'm like, what happened? She woke up and she wrote Luke 2:4-5. So she opened up her Bible to Luke chapter 2, verse 4 and 5, and it just doesn't make any sense. And she's like, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense. And then it dawns on her, Luke 24:5, the last part of Luke. Jesus dies, he's resurrected, and the women go to the tomb and see the angels. And the angels say, woman, why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. Wow. He's risen.
Wow.
Yeah. So, story that God had their memory recall. I don't know how those things happen in God's kingdom, to be honest with you. I'd be interested to hear. But I can tell you that particular day, she's like, I'm good.
That verse is all she needed to hear to know, okay, Caleb's not here.
Yeah. So God's redemption continues throughout our life, even 2026, 14 years after our son is gone.
Well, his story, there's a couple things you talk about in your book which relate back to this. Purpose and the power of purpose you talk about in your book, and the brotherhood. Yeah. It sounds like, can you talk about, it's because you've now taken what the enemy meant for evil. The enemy wanted to destroy your faith with the illness of your son, losing your son, but now in the multiplied impact of trauma in your lives and in your marriage and all of that, and that now you're leading a marriage ministry at Wind River Ranch. You've got the Got Your Six ministry, trying to help others in law enforcement, military background that are dealing with trauma, how to do it, so you've reworked you've not allowed what happened to be negative. You've turned it into a positive with purpose, right? And
Absolutely.
Then you've also talked about how having others around you, this nurse, other men around you is also. Can you talk about purpose and brotherhood here for a moment?
We'll kind of put those together. I think every man struggles with purpose. I think we all do. All Christians do, right? We're told the Great Commission to go out and make disciples. And I think men will go, yay, wait a minute. How do I do that? And this is a really simple leadership philosophy too. And I tell people, people will get kind of promoted up. And it's kind of what we're doing, right? As Christians, we kind of get promoted up. We're ready to go make disciples. And we're like, well, how do I do that? And the reality is that you got promoted, and Christ has already worked who you are and the character of who you are, what you do well. And I think men so much they find something new, and then they try to look at other men and mimic them, or like, I'm going to do what Jim does. I'm going to do what Dave does. I'm going to do this. Man, and God has made you perfectly and wonderfully in his image, and every one of us are made differently and distinctly. So finding our purpose, for me, I had to kind of figure out, at first is like, no, it's Dave. It's who God made me. He made me a leader. He made me a leader among men. I love men's group. I love being part of, when I left the school and found law enforcement and I found the SWAT team, all of a sudden I found a group of men around me that I thought, and they're the men around me that are going to give up their life for me. And I will tell you, that is truth. They would have. Any one of those men would have stepped in front of a bullet for me or taken one, and I would have done the same thing. But I had to understand that that was in a particular situation. Because traditionally, if we were do 4 or 5 search warrants in a day, and if you've ever done anything like that, any of the men that'll be watching this, whether military or whatever, understand what adrenaline does to your body. When you kick a door and you don't know what's on the other side and you almost get in a shooting or you do get in a shooting and these things happen, I mean, it is like running a sprint for 10 miles. When you're done, your body is just done. The adrenaline dump is amazing. And those same men that will step in front of a bullet for you, what traditionally would happen is we would go to the bar and we'd have a couple beers, right? And that was kind of how we kind of declutter things or we decompress a little bit there. And but then life would happen. Like, oh, my wife's giving me a hard time or this or that's going on. And the same guy who would step in front of a bullet for you would say, just get rid of her. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of other fish in the sea. So what I was craving or what I thought I had, and some of those men are Christian men. I had some great influencers there too. But what I knew I needed something different. I knew I need something different. So that's where purpose kind of goes. So I knew who I was, the kind of person who I was. I knew that to bring my skill set and my ability and my talent, right? As a leader, when I train people to do jiu-jitsu tournaments, I don't tell them to walk into a tournament. If you were one of my students and you had 3 of the best techniques in the world, I wouldn't say, Jim, don't do those techniques today against this top competitor. Try something new. Go in there with your best fight, with your best strengths, and you go in there with everything you got. And I think as Christians, we need to do the same thing. I'm a teacher. I'm a storyteller. Right? I've had some great experiences in my life, and I have trauma in my life. I have to learn to be vulnerable with that. So I've learned how to do those things. So my purpose is sharing that. My purpose is sharing that with first responders because I just have a passion for them because I think I know their heart. I know how much they want to do, but I know how much they get hurt by the trauma and the things they've seen in the last decade, by even society.
Yeah.
Right? In the last decade and a half, this has been my passion in law enforcement, is to bring the gospel to first responders because there are people out there telling them you're worthless, you're horrible, you're this, you're that, whether it's, Trayvon Martin to George Floyd to all these different things that go on. I was ready to get out of law enforcement until all these things happened. I had my own gym. And when I had my own gym, my wife told me, I turned 50. I competed a lot. She retired me after that year. I'm like, I want to compete. I brought the guys to world championships. And about a year or so later, a couple of years later, she says, that's it. So you got to give something up. You always wanted to run a gym. You got the gym. You're good to go. You can't be running a police department and a gym. And I said, you're right. I said, something's not right. She goes, what do you mean nothing's right? This is the perfect time to get out of law enforcement. People hate cops. You've done your job. And I go, I don't think this is the time to leave. I think this is the time to stay. She goes, let's pray about it. So we prayed about it. And she goes, this ultimately is it's our decision, but this is all you've talked about for 20 years now. This is all you've said you wanted to do. And I came back, I said, we're going to sell the gym. And she's like, what? I'm like, what was your prayer? I said, my prayer is for God to leverage me as a godly man to influence the kingdom. Wherever that will be leveraged most, that's where I'll go. That's where I'll be. I sold the gym.
So how did you discern between selling the gym or leaving law enforcement? How did God speak that to your heart or confirm it?
He spoke that through my heart through the connections that I was making, the influences I could have in people's lives that I never expected. In 2001, I actually wrote my personal goal of being a chief of police of a smaller police department because I wanted to leave a big agency, come take over a smaller one, and I love little team tactics. I thought I knew what I'd be. I thought I'd be running and changing policies and procedures, and we'd done all that, right? We'd have done amazing transformation in our police department. But what I never thought we'd be doing is facilitating grief share in 12 residents showing up to a grief share because they heard the chief of police is doing a grief share program. I never imagined one of our residents calling to ask for a meeting. I'm like, you want to tell me why? Because when they want to meet with the chief, you're like, hey guys, Jim, what did you do today? Did you write somebody a ticket? Let me know. Like, no, I just want to talk to the chief. And two ladies come in and ask me to pray for their husband and invite their husband to Iron Men of God because and sharing some personal things and will I meet with him. And when those things kept happening, it was clear. It was clear. Not that I didn't have those opportunities at the gym, I did. And the interesting thing is I still
just had that inner peace that
I had
this
this
is what
inner
you're supposed to
peace.
do.
And I'm still part of the gym as far as I teach, I share, so I get to share this stuff there too. But I prayed for God to leverage me that would most impact the kingdom, wherever that would go. I would give it all up. I would go wherever I want.
And is that when you started Got Your Six?
I started Got Your Six after George Floyd, during George Floyd.
As because the law enforcement personnel were getting so criticized in the media, you wanted to be a encouragement to those guys.
Yeah. See, by then my faith has been very strong. My wife and I prayed. You know, I was joining men's ministries all over, and we literally prayed together as a couple. I said, let's pray just like I would as a SWAT team for being the best SWAT team guy or being the best jiu-jitsu guy. I want to pray that God puts the most influential, godly people in my life that are bigger, faster, stronger than I could ever imagine. You are an answer to that prayer. You're a blessing to that prayer. Because we prayed that prayer for 3 months. And I remember kind of playing with different groups and going, not playing, but joining. And I'm like, these guys aren't real. They're not real. Then I got invited to Iron Men of God. And the first day I sat down, David Hill came down and sat down by me. He literally bent down on his knee. He's like, hey, bro, I heard your story because my wife blogged. And I'm like, who are you? I'm in uniform. And since then, he's one of my best friends. We had lunch and I told him my story. And obviously one of the presenters in the passive Ironman, and now I'm, in the ministry in there. But every person in Iron Men of God is an answer to my prayer. So as we're going through, as we're building now I'm just feeling this passion for first responders. I'm seeing the hurt, I'm seeing the pain, and now I'm seeing everything again, starting from Trayvon Martin. You know, you may or may not know this, but Trayvon Martin started in 2012. I was still at the sheriff's office. I was running the Central Florida Intelligence Exchange. I was an intelligence director. I ran all intelligence for Central Florida. We ran the intelligence for Trayvon Martin. So I knew exactly everything that was going on inside and outside and the threats and everything else. So watching from that to Ferguson, and I was invited on Real Talk TV up in Claremont when that came out to talk about those kind of things. I'm like, man, we need to be leading Christians, we need to be leading first responders through the gospel in a godly way. So this passion, and I remember, for me, I just kind of felt this tug. Hey, first responders, I'm putting this in front of you, Dave. Do something. Do something here. And George Floyd happened. So got to remember, here's what happened in 2020. We sold our gym just before COVID. Well, hey, God, thank you very much. COVID hits. Police officers are ordered, hey, everybody else is going to stay home, but you guys, you have to work. Now, it wasn't that long ago. We can all remember. It was a little anxious. Like, am I going to die? What's going on? Because we're not sure what's happening here. And then 6 months after that, so we're heroes. It wasn't 6 months later. We were all zeros. And I can share one story that one of the officers in Central Florida drove to First Baptist Orlando. You know where that is, down off Elmy McLeod Road. Pulls into the parking lot and gets out and starts shopping. And I don't know if associate pastor, I don't know who it was that went over there, had come up to him and he said, hey, what can I do? Can I pray for you? What's going on? Why are you upset? And he just said, why do they hate me? It's like, who? Why does everybody hate me? I wasn't a part of this. I didn't do any of this. And it was a really interesting time.
So being in law enforcement in general before we went through the crazy COVID years was lots of trauma we've talked about.
Yeah.
But you heap on top of these professionals in law enforcement who have experienced trauma daily. You talked about 800 over a
25-year career.
25-year career. You heap on top of them a social media blitz of hatred.
Yeah.
And so did you have a lot of guys leaving law enforcement at that time? And how did you help them? How were you helping guys during that season?
Yeah. So across the board, people were leaving law enforcement in droves.
Yeah.
And the opposite of what people were saying would happen, right? They were like, oh, yeah, we're going to drive the bad guys out. No, the good ones, the smart ones that had families, their wives are going, hey, honey, this isn't worth it anymore. I know you want to do this, but for a family, will you leave because you have a college degree and a career and you're smart and you're actually an engineer or something else? Those are the guys that left. The people that are going to leave, that are not going to leave, are the ones that have no other option. Think about that. It wasn't very helpful. All across the board, across this entire country, we were losing law enforcement officers. They couldn't hire law enforcement officers. They were all short-staffed. And of course, then you had all the negativity against law enforcement, everybody being painted with a broad brush, which we say we don't want to do, but absolutely was being done. I will tell you that even happened in churches. I was dealing with that. I had some people that were calling me because of my position, because of my position as chief of police, because of my, I think, connections with Iron Men of God and some other stuff. We had, unfortunately, some police officers that were saying, hey, my church is just treating me horribly. And I remember stepping into some of those spaces and meeting with pastors and talking with pastors, and some of them offering just like this to go on podcasts and different things like that. It was such a unique time in our lives. And that's actually when Got Your Six came about. So what Got Your Six is, and I think I've explained that to you before, comes from a military term. And we know in battle, you're facing a battle straight ahead. But we know from Ephesians 6:10, the battle is all around us and it's behind us. So if you're facing the battle ahead, is the 12 o'clock. The 6 o'clock is behind you. And who's got your six? Well, your partner and your buddy, is you have to have somebody that has got your six. And I remember at that time period, John, it was in August of 2020. I remember going to the coast because I love going to the water to kind of relax and chill out. I remember being frustrated and not being at peace. And I opened up I was sitting on a balcony looking at the water, reading my Bible. And I just remember I read through Ephesians, which is kind of my go-to. When I'm kind of stressed out, I actually will read Ephesians every day for about like 30 days. It takes me 22 minutes to read the book of Ephesians. And I just remember sitting back, and I just remember this presence of, I told you to go out and do something. Go out and share first responders about me. And I'm like, I'm sitting here whining, complaining like a little baby, because this church did that, this person did that social media did that. It's like, get rid of all that noise, declutter all that noise in your life. Just go out and share my message. So we created Got Your Six. We launched it that year. We had several classroom studies. We did first responder mental health. We did a marriage. We did a financial impact. So we did several of those classes, and we invited first responders from all over. There's a deer right there. Sorry, something. So we started hosting those classes and doing those. I created a social media Facebook site called Got Your Six, and there's over 1,000 first responders on there and first responder supporters, pastors and stuff like that.
So if a first responder is watching this and wants to know where to get the resources, that's where they go?
Yeah, just hit me up on Facebook, and I'll put you in our private group our private Got Your Six group. I just share a positive message every day. I don't try to get too deep in theological studies or anything else. It's to go there to get a positive message. I think that's what social media should be about.
Yeah.
I don't kind of do anything negative on there. And then there is where you can see some of the other stuff, maybe these classes or seminars or fireside chats that's going on in Claremont, all these different things. So that's how Got Your Six started. And then as we kind of merged into some other things, which maybe we'll talk about, the Healing Warriors program, which has actually Got Your Six, Iron Men of God is a part of that.
Is that the Wind River, the Healing
Yes.
River? Why don't you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, so in 2017, a buddy of mine named Joel Johnson, we were on the Roper YMCA board together, and he had a passion for military folks, bringing military folks to the gospel, and he was involved with a ranch, an old-fashioned Christian family dude ranch. Very few of those in the country. This is all called Wind River Ranch. It is a Christian family dude ranch in Estes, Colorado, up in the mountains, 7,000 to 10,000 feet, 80-plus horses, electric mountain bikes, kayaks, hiking, amazing stuff, but it's Christian base. Traditionally, a family will go and pay a pretty substantial fee. I mean, it's expensive to go out there and bring your family out there. There's like 16, 17 cabins, and you just enjoy nature. You horseback ride, you kayak, you do all these things. There's usually a guest pastor every week who gives a message every day at 10 o'clock. Well, Joel invited me he said, we're starting this program because of veterans dying. And he said, I'm interested. I know first responders are dealing with the same thing. I'm like, hey, I'm a first responder. Let's connect together. He goes, you need to come to the ranch. So we go to the ranch in 2017. And what we do is we raise money for veterans and first responders, for their families to go completely free, to have a week of respite. You walk in, you see the psalm, be still and know that I am God. It's one of the few places that you truly can be still. Your phone doesn't work, nothing works. You get up and you hike to the top of the mountain. You look at God's beauty.
It's trying to strengthen the marriage, the family,
it's just
faith
amazing.
walk, all of that. So I would imagine you've got a whole lot more demand than you have the ability to fill spaces.
We do. We went in 2017 as guests. Excuse me. It was pretty amazing because we went at first to the regular family camp. We got thrown into that. My first night there, I did a little fupa, and you stand around and you introduce your family, which of course our family wasn't with us, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, kind of, hey, we got 3 kids, we got 4 kids, and I didn't kind of say my son's name, and it upset my wife a little bit, so that was a little tug back and forth. But within a couple days, the guest pastor and the folks kind of asked our story, rallied around us, and it was just amazing, and we just loved it. I can tell you, before we went to that camp the first time, a good friend of ours by the name of Ken Weiss went to the camp. So Ken goes up there, and he comes back, and I said, Ken, how was it? Because I was getting to go next. He goes, Dave, it was amazing. He's like, I got to ride a horse. You know Ken, right? I see you smiling. Ken's a paraplegic, for those people who don't know. And he's been paraplegic since his military days in his early 20s for 45 years or so. But Ken will do anything. He will jump off this roof if you tell him to do so. I mean, he's just that crazy. And he realizes, I can do anything you can do without legs or even barely my arms working. So Ken comes back. He says, I rode a horse. I go, how'd that happen? He said, Cowboy Nick took a rope, and he roped me in to the horse, and off I went. I'm thinking, that's got to be scary, Ken. How did that feel? And you know what he told me? It's like, I felt like a man. Oh. That's big. So as we get to go to camp, I want to back up just a week or two. When I was younger, I had a boat. I always wanted a boat. I always wanted to take a back up fishing, and I was kind of, I would kind of start introducing things lightly to our wife. Hey, what do you think about a boat and this and that? She's like, we got a motorcycle. We don't need a boat. Shot that down right away. And so I'm like, all right, plan B. I kind of go with that. So I'm wearing her down a little bit, and I said, hey, honey, I'd really like to get a boat. Maybe we'll give up the motorcycle. It's time anyway. It's like Wheel of Fortune. I've been in one accident. I don't want to be in another one. And she's like, you know what? She's like, you can get a boat. And I told my wife, I concocted this thing. I said, hey, listen, I saved $7,900. And I did. I saved this amount of money. We can come back. I've been looking at a boat. I can buy a boat for this amount, which may have not been the whole truth, Jim. May have been that was the down payment, maybe a little bit more. But my wife acquiesced. She said, okay. And so we go to the ranch. We ended up having a great time. Cowboy Don comes out at the very end, knowing the story now. And he says, hey, Dave, or no, he says to all of us, just like any ministry does. We're glad you guys are here. We have these programs called Healing Warriors. We're looking for support. We have military veterans and first responders or paraplegics. Horse therapy is one of our things. And we didn't know what we're going to do, but we've just found one person who actually can make a special saddle that has a special backing, that can rope them in, that can tie them in. It's perfectly made, but it costs a lot of money, and the price is $7,900.
Whoa. Exactly what you would set aside.
So, and my wife and I went back into our room, and we prayed, and I looked at her. So what do you think about that saddle? And it was like, well, I think we're supposed to sponsor it. And then a little conversation, well, should we give $2,000? Did you hear how much it was? I'm like, dog, I should have never said anything to you. And at the end of the day, we went down and sponsored the saddle. It's got our son's name and Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 on it. And we get messages all year long of military veterans and first responders who get to ride in that saddle and hear our story of hope, which is amazing. So you asked about purpose. So that brings tremendous purpose to our life.
Well, for everybody listening, they're going to learn a lot more of these stories and a lot more in your book, Resilience, when it comes up, Seeds of Resilience, when it comes out. Yeah. And you, at the end of the book, you talk about how important prayer is to you. Could you pray for everybody listening? Everybody listening has faced some level of trauma. And then those who are first responders and military have faced a bunch of it.
Yeah.
Would you just pray for them and the knowing the hope that's in Jesus that you found? Pray for them today, and that they would be stirred in their heart to draw closer to Jesus in the midst of their trauma.
Yeah, I will. Sure, let's do that. Man, dear Lord, I'm so grateful and thankful for what you've done in my life. I'm thankful for Jim, for this opportunity, this message to reach out to our first responders and our military veterans, Lord. I want to say to each and every one of them, thank you for what you do. You are wonderfully and beautifully made in God's image. I also want to tell you, I know I'm somewhat familiar with the trauma and the things that you've dealt with in your life, and know that that Jesus is ready to take on that burden that you've been taking on, that illusion of control that you believe that you've had, that you've taken control, that you need to turn that over and give that over to him. Whatever trial or tribulation, whatever traumas that's in your life, allow him to renew your mind, renew your spirit. Allow him to enter your life and just have an abundant life in Christ. And I pray that each and every one of our first responders, Lord, I pray for their protection. I pray that you get an opportunity to send somebody to speak into their lives, to speak truth into them. I pray that there's no guilt, shame, or regret. I pray that any unforgiveness in their heart, any bitterness that may be in their heart, any moral failures that they've seen about our community and our society who just fails, and you wonder why God allows this to happen, Lord. I ask that you touch them. I ask that you wrap your arms around them. I ask that they feel your presence and they know your peace, and that they have a relationship with you. It's in your Son's precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dave. So if they want to know more, they can reach you on where, Facebook or?
Reach me on Facebook. If you want to go to our website for the book is David Ogden Book, not books yet, but davidogdenbook.com. Okay. And actually you can get my email there. You can directly link to the book and get to the Facebook site there.
So the Facebook address is what?
Facebook address is under my name. Just look me up, David Ogden.
Okay.
Yep, and then I'll put you in a private chat group there, but go to davidogdenbook.com. If you do that, then actually you can send an email to me there too, so you can connect all those kind of ways.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.